Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Dr. Cammy and Karen Go Keto, where we're working on a transitioning from a standard American diet to a keto diet, and more recently working on carnivore. And I'm here today without Karen, with her blessing for us to be here, with the wonderful Mike Collins, who is the sugar-free man who created the wonderful Quit Sugar Summit and also Sugar Addiction Quit. What is the name of the website?
Sugaraddiction.com.
Sugaraddiction.com. I wanted to put the quit in front of it. Sugaraddiction.com, that's what he works on and is his specialty. He's been sugar free for decades and is here today to help me with a little bit of coaching. We did a video previously where we got some tears flowing and talking a little bit about getting to the root cause of what causes me to want sugar so desperately. And so we're going to continue a little bit with that today and talk a little bit about where I am and how best for me to move forward from here.
Excellent. And for those of you who have not seen the last episode, just previous to this one, it should be right next to it or very close to it. Just search it up 6 or 7 days ago. Please watch that. It's very important as a prelim to this, or even you can watch it afterward. But both episodes. That episode is really good work by Cammy and really vulnerable and honest and important in what we do. You'll see some work that was and is super important. But how are you today?
Good. I'm hopeful. I'm interested in really working on getting rid of this addiction to sugar. I have gotten rid of all of my other addictions, and this is my last one to go. And
You're
I
not
think the
alone.
toughest.
It is the toughest. You're not alone. We have hundreds because I'm open about my drug and alcohol recovery, that we have attracted hundreds of people who have been sober for off drugs and alcohol for a long time, but they all seem to still struggle, some of them, with the sugar. And they all say, not even one is missing. 100% say is harder to get off sugar than it was their drug of choice, their alcohol or their drugs. So, you're not alone there for sure.
And, just walking into the grocery store, every time I walk in, it's all right there. And it's not like my alcohol is sitting there, in a big circle saying hello to me. It's the carbohydrates.
Yeah. Yeah, just a quick recap of last week. It was so interesting. I mean, so interesting. I've been sending people from our groups and everything over to watch it. Is that, you couldn't really understand. The basic premise was for every 2 or 3 weeks, you would binge a little bit.
Three to
And
four, 3 to 4 weeks.
okay, so we're moving it out a little bit now, and it keeps getting longer, which is great. And it actually has a name. It's called Intermittent Rewards, but you guys should go back and watch it. But we couldn't, I'm trying to dig down and ask you, why would you binge? What was the feeling that led right up to it? And it was almost like your mind would not go there. It took us about 20 minutes to get to the point that you had visited your mom that morning, who's in an Alzheimer's care unit. And, she's always been hard on you, even though you're a super high performer. We're, Miss San Diego or runner up in Miss San Diego. You've done, a doctor, and, you've done amazing things in your life, but she was still hard on you. And in right up to when she didn't hardly recognize you, she was still, chastising or whatever a little bit. And then, it finally clicked that you had visited her that morning, and then you binged it. But, the bottom line was that the emotions of that unresolved work with your mom, kind of got with you. And then, you just it was a habit, really, through your whole life. When she would do that or whatever, you'd have sugar. And it just, esteemed Dr. Lustig says, you can't fight the limbic brain when it wants its dopamine, that little soothing, that self-soothing. So where are you today? How are you a week later? How are you feeling? All that kind of stuff.
So just a comment about that, Mike, is that, and I think I had said this in the last video about how I feel so sensitive around my mother. And I'm I'm one of those sensitive people. I think a lot of addicts can relate to this. I don't know if you relate to that or not, about how things really get to me deeply. And it's wonderful when it's great. Like I can appreciate a flower or a butterfly or things in nature, like in such a beautiful way. But then other things get to me in such a difficult way. But I'm so sensitive around my mother and what she says and does. So I feel like a lot of it's me. And I think I had said, in the last video, I'm really sensitive. And you said, no, it is what it is. You have to really look at what it is. But I still feel that way, that I'm just so sensitive around her and the things that she says. And I really take it to heart. When she really doesn't know best what's for me, she really works on what's best for her and what takes care of her in the best ways. So I just wanted to bring that up. But what's going on for me now is that I've been toying with the idea of going on a GLP-1 agonist. And I've been thinking about this for months and doing a lot of thinking and research on it for trying to find somebody who's particularly like me, because I'm different in some ways with the fact that as a 61-year-old woman, I'm turning 62 on Friday. Go Pisces. As a 61-year-old woman, actually 62 basically, I build muscle and keep muscle very efficiently. And I have this endomorph body, which I've talked to my fitness and nutrition gentleman, Jeff, about. And I've been at this plateau for like the last 4 or 5, 6 weeks, I think it's been at least, where I'm not really losing fat. I'm gaining weight. I'm gaining my fat back on the last visit I was with him, but my muscle is not going down and not losing the weight there. Now, the reason why I've been doing that is because I've been binge eating. I've been going on these binges. And the idea of thinking about going on this GLP-1 agonist has caused it to flare up really bad, because my feeling is, oh, this is my last hurrah, right?
Yeah.
This is my last hurrah before I make the commitment to go on this GLP-1 agonist. So I did binge yesterday. I didn't binge the day before that, and I binged the day before that on March 10th. I have been keeping track of what I had been eating. So that part of it is there too. And then Karen, who is a dear friend to me, who can be very hard on me. I told her she doesn't have a lot of empathy, but I think the way that she talks to me is in a very stern way to try to get to me. And she knows me very well. We've known each other for over 35 years. She's saying, her feeling is that there are things that I can put into place, which I have not put into place, that you and I can talk about, to try to help me potentially go without the GLP-1 agonist. Because my biggest fear about the GLP-1 agonist is not that I'm going to lose muscle. I'm not worried about that. And, I probably will slowly lose weight, but it's the binging that could come on after I'm off of it if I don't have the other things in place. So I'm thinking, get my things in place as I go on the GLP-1 agonist. But Karen's more like, just get your things on plate. Just get your things in place. Don't worry about going on it. Just get your things in place. And if it turns out that I still have these binges, but they become every 5 weeks, they become every 8 weeks, they become every 10 weeks, then that might be the more reasonable way to go about it. So I'm looking at some guidance in that way. And also, if we wanted to do some coaching around why my mother is such a trigger for me, because I think I've been thinking about this, and I think it has to do with me feeling a little defective and a little inept and a little not good enough, and for who I am, not for necessarily what I do, but I think my mom had it come across as what I did, but it's soaked into me as who I am. And that has made it difficult because I did the best I could and still feel like I fell short.
Yeah. Well, I think that last bit is really what we need to work on. I mean, that is the basis of all this, right? And, a couple of quick things before we dive into this. But, as far as the sensitive part, a great majority of our clients are sensitive. They're highly sensitive, like HSP are highly sensitive people. Elaine Aronson wrote a book about the highly sensitive person. They are very sensitive to light and sound and just in general. And so that's one. But two, the GLP-1s, I think that you are at a place where you almost, and I'm the furthest thing from tough love, and hopefully it doesn't come across that way, but what Karen is talking about is pretty right. Okay. And we've had hundreds of bariatric patients after they've had the bariatric surgery and they figured out how to hack it and use the sugar, right? Because they'd never really solved the sugar problem. And now we've had not quite hundreds this time, but we've had, 30 or 40 people that post GLP-1s, the agonists, that they have done the same thing, right? They lost the weight and figured, well, that was the solution, but they went right back to the binging because they didn't solve the problem. right? They didn't fix the issue. And the issue really is your abstinence, if you want to put it blankly, like the sugar and flour. But moreover, it was the work that we did last week, which is, brings me full circle right back to that. You've had this relationship with the mother forever, and I've had the same one. And I don't know if I could swear or not, but he's even dead with my father, right? It's the same thing. It was just never enough. Well, it didn't matter what you did. You could be a billionaire, cure cancer, and it never would be enough. You know what I mean? It just would never be enough. And it is that feeling that you need to work on more than you need to work on, diet or weight. It's not, and you probably need a reminder of not even just our program, but a general tenet is this is not about the weight. The weight will come, the plateaus will break. The goal here is to, without the sugar and the flour, without these products and we call it the difference between effort-based dopamine and substance-based dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
When I use the word dopamine for everybody, I mean, because everybody knows what dopamine is and it's kind of popular, but I mean dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, GABA, oxytocin, adrenal glands, endorphins, cannabinoid receptors. All of the brain and body reward chemicals are affected by sugar and flour. It gives you a little boost, a little bump, like taking a bump of a drug or a hit of a joint or a beer or whatever. And so you have to realize that we have to stop self-soothing with sugar or with, honestly, as a logistical strategy. I think you mentioned last week that your mom is to the point where she's not even recognizing name, asking you to remind you of names and stuff. If we could maybe give a little break from mom a little bit. She's in a care unit. She's safe. She's, clothed and fed, and nothing's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Let some time and space elapse between that. I think would be an easier way for you to start to, start feeling the way that you deserve. You've accomplished a lot, in this quest for, look, everybody starts with us for weight loss. That's the thing, But the reality is we really want to get you to the point where you're, you're stopped self-soothing with sugar, and you've developed all of these other ways to self-soothe. You're good at your exercise stuff, double down on that. That's another way to self-soothe, or saunas or cold plunges or meditation or massage, double down on all that self-care stuff when you feel something coming up. But personally, I'll put it out there. I'm not a fan of these things simply because we just don't have enough information. And the goal, number one, is just the weight loss. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not about the weight loss, because if you don't fix the underlying issue, you're bound and determined the body and addiction in general. I like that phrase, addiction's in the parking lot doing push-ups while you're abstinent or whatever. It doesn't matter that you're abstinent. It's still waiting for you.
And it waits patiently. Waits for a long time. It'll sit there and wait for a long time. Yeah.
So I don't want to see it like you have time. You know what I mean? I don't think it's a physical crisis. I do agree with bariatric and some GLP-1 use when somebody's 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, huge, and they're going to die if they don't get a little bit of relief. Then that's a different story. But, you're honestly quite normal when it comes to the level of weight and, that you've accumulated just over the years. You had some tough stuff that you've gone through. So yeah, again, it's and I don't think it's a personal opinion. I really do believe it's a therapeutic, and the correct thing to do is to just, I always tell people, give me 90 days, give me 90 days. And we're only about 3 weeks or 4 weeks into this series. So about another 60 days, and then make that decision.
Well, and I just binged yesterday. So if I'm going to give you 90 abstinent days.
That's all right.
If I'm going to give you 90 abstinent days, it starts tomorrow. It's so interesting to listen to you, because I feel this pushback, right? Like in my brain, I'm going,
I want to hear all the pushback. Yeah, go ahead.
But, I'm thinking, well, I didn't tell you that, the other day I checked my insulin level, and my insulin level, since I started doing this keto diet, started at 28, where they're saying a normal level is less than 18 on the test that I did. So I went to from 28 to 34, and I just checked it the other day, and it was 56. Jeff, my nutrition and fitness coach, has never seen one that high. So, it's high. And I don't know if it was related to like binging, like it was 5 or 6 days after. I don't know how long. I was thinking it wouldn't affect that, but I did listen. So then I'm looking for videos that are going to justify me being on a GLP-1. And I found one from Dr. Ben Bikman that talked about how in people where the insulin resistance is so high, that the cravings are so high that they're not going to be able to overcome the cravings, and they're going to give in to the binging, that going on the GLP-1s might be a reasonable thing to do. And so it's just also very interesting that I got a hold of the GLP-1 and I have it sitting in my refrigerator. And as soon as I got it, I said, well, I'll start it tomorrow. Then I started having some real fear over getting on it because I don't want to have problems when I go off. And Karen knows me and I know me, and I am an addict. And I'm really afraid that I'm just going to, just skirt over from the sugar to the GLP-1 agonist and feel like I'm using that as a drug and, just my reliance, and use it till whatever, 6 months, 12 months, whatever, get some weight off, and then be stuck with the same problem that you and I are trying to get to today. And the other thing I want to mention real quick, Mike, was when I went away to medical school, this was a while ago. So I went to medical school. I graduated in 91. In 1987, I went away to medical school. And in my second year there in 1988, I realized that I had to have a serious break from my mother because I had a conversation with her on the phone. And she said, well, I don't know, she said, I don't know why you think you have to hang out with all those boys and drink margaritas on the weekends, because that's what I was doing. And that's why I did not do well on my first set of exams, because I had gotten this out-of-state scholarship and I thought I was so great and everything. And there were people there that were so good looking and so smart and so sweet and so nice, like our class president. And she said, you're just as smart as anybody else up there. And she was wrong. She was dead wrong. There were so many bright people there. And I hung up the phone, and I remember that moment because I thought, I could be the greatest neurosurgeon on the face of the earth, and it's not going to make my mother happy. So I started living my life for me instead of for her. And I ended up in the counseling office every day for like 2 weeks because I was trying to figure out if I still wanted to stay in medical school because it was so difficult. It was such a challenge. And I decided to stay and ultimately had a really successful, fun, and rewarding career. But that I've been fighting this for decades.
Yeah. No. Look, I mean, I think you nailed it on the head, and I think you know this, but there is research that's very, coming out slowly, but that people that get on GLP-1s literally push a pause button on almost all addictions, meaning they stop gambling and they stop drinking as much. And it's like there is an effect on the brain with this drug. And we have no idea. No one has any idea yet what it is, right? And so your fears are very founded in this idea that you are just delaying the inevitable. And I do like Ben, and, except for one little thing where he's starting to promote a little allulose stuff. And I do agree with the idea that he says that the insulin resistance is high and the cravings are high, right? That makes a lot of sense. And it happened with me on, as I transitioned from kind of more plant-based stuff to more animal-based stuff, when I put a continuous glucose monitor on, I could see it very clearly that when the thing would spike, it would take a long time to come down. And nowadays, if I were to even force a spike, it comes straight back down. And so the insulin resistance has healed. And I think you are healing each day that you go without sugar. And I don't know, and I have to, after dealing with addicts for just over 40 years now, I really do believe that you need to handle the addictive piece of the puzzle ahead of any kind of weight or bodily function part of it. You know what I mean? And the GLP-1s are just going to be, I don't want to compare them yet because the research is not clear yet, to a Suboxone or to a methadone or to a what they call harm recover or harm reduction. They talk, you can ease your way off or down. But in this case, I believe that GLP-1s do at least assuage some addictive behaviors in the brain somehow. And we just don't have any information about that, yet. And so I don't want to see us having this conversation, in 6 months because you just got back off of them and you're skinny, but now you're binging again. You know what I mean? It's like that. I don't know that that's an effective use of our time or your time. And also, I don't think it's healing. I don't think you're healing.
Yeah.
Because you'll do other things, Look, there's a definite cascade of positive feelings and positive emotions that come from it, for sure, the weight loss. But, it's that issue that it's almost like you're doing my work for me by, when we start talking, you start saying, I was in college and I needed a break from my mother. It's like, now here we are, 40 years later, and I still need a break from my mother, you know what I mean? And now she's safe and, going to be okay. You're doing it out of respect and out of duty, and it's affecting you. And she's not even thinking. It's not even like registering with it. You're even visiting. So yeah, I mean, it's so weird. And I don't want to be as blunt as Karen, but I think you do know the answer to this question. And it is the more scarier, the scarier route,
It is. And, there's two parts of me. Part of me is like sick of dealing with it for decades, and you're right. It's 40 years. I mean, I was 24 when I went off to medical school. I think I was 24 when I made that decision. And but like with being on carnivore, like I've only been on carnivore really, well, I made it without my first binge 25 days to my first binge. I was really doing quite a good job on carnivore, although I had not had the dairy pull off completely. I was still using a little bit of dairy. And so as I continue now, I do want to do the carnivore diet, and I want to just have dairy with my just cream in my coffee. I do still want my coffee and my cream. I'm working. I do have most of it's decaf. Rarely will I have a cup of regular coffee, but I don't think the caffeine really affects me too terribly. I know you've talked about that. I mean, if you want me off the caffeine, I can go completely off. I'll make that commitment if that's what
have you heard my Olympic athlete story? I'm sure you have.
I heard your Olympic athlete story.
So
I've heard it more than once.
I mean,
but how much caffeine was she on?
Only, everybody says I only drank like 1 or 2. No one's ever gone past 2. Like no one's ever said, "Oh, I drink 10 cups a day." They're always like, "I only drank," and everybody uses the word "only," like only 1 or only 2. You know what I mean? And I only drink decaf. No. Like you're the sensitive. It doesn't matter how only it is. It's keeping the cravings for sugar alive. It's keeping the cravings for sugar alive.
So you're saying I need to be off the decaf too?
Yes.
Yes, I heard that as a yes. Was that a yes?
Yes, that's a yes. Because look, I mean, in our caffeine group, you see, and these are people that aren't even quitting sugar. They're like freaking like 3 and 4 and 5 months of anhedonia. You know the definition of that term, but for our audience, anhedonia means the inability to feel joy. And they're like, I don't feel myself. It's been 3 months. And then finally, 3, 4, 5 sometimes, not everybody's like this, but they finally start to feel themselves again, and they've healed their brain chemicals. It's really like coming off of a methamphetamine of sorts, of cocaine or speed or something. And it does keep the cravings for sugar alive, especially in the sensitive brain. Now, I did have a thought as a Suboxone for you, maybe just a touch of berries instead of binging, you know what I mean? Or some broccoli or Brussels sprouts. Maybe, it's probably, Dr. Bickman's probably right. You probably did dive into that pretty heavily. You're going straight cold turkey off of heroin here. Maybe you do need a something in between. Most of our folks are not like you. They go to a Mediterranean diet or a keto diet, and they're still using some of the, what we call around here borderline foods, the dairy, the fruit and the nuts and the grains. So maybe a little bit of that, or even a little bit of rice sometimes, might be an easier bridge for you.
Well, the reason why I pulled off of all of it and went straight carnivore is because I'm continuing to binge. I'm continuing to binge every 3 to 4 weeks, and I'd like to get rid of it and go 90 days without a binge. That's what I'm really motivated to do, and I just feel like I can't get the job done.
Yeah.
And it used to be, it's getting better. I mean, it used to be that I would white knuckle it through those 3 to 4 weeks and then finally give in. And now that I've been on carnivore, it's been easier. It's been easy, but it's still coming. So I don't, berries, when I was doing the keto diet, berries, like a little bit of blueberries, like I would count them 10, or like just a little more, like a small little handful, or a half of a green apple did seem to be okay. That did seem to not stimulate me to want more. So I don't know. I mean, if you suggested that, would I do it like on a regular basis, like every 3 to 4 days I would do that? Or
Well,
would
I mean,
I wait till I'm on the third week, at the beginning of the third week? I mean, I'm just,
I think everybody's doing that is a little bit different. I really do believe that, you're healing each time you go 3 weeks, right? And I think if you can hack it, if you can stand it, the carnivore is the right thing to do. I do believe that. But if it can't, then maybe I think my answer is that, you only do it like when you're in place of a binge, right? If you can stay carnivore and caffeine free, for our audience, like, you're going to think this conversation sounds insane. Like, you're going to think that for God's sakes, we're talking about sugar and they're talking about the amount of fructose in berries and a little bit of caffeine and decaf, right? But for the highly sensitive person whose insulin resistance is, through the roof, and it affects you that way, there's, hundreds of our folks, the same exact thing happens. It's like there's these little, as you heal from the sugar, the real heavy drug, if you will, and the flour, you start to realize something else might be bothering you, or setting you off, or triggering you to use the sugar, or whatever, the actual sugar. So, don't take it, don't dismiss this as the ramblings of a couple of crazies. This is real for hundreds and thousands now of people that we've worked with. So this is and you'll see it if you try it. So please do try it, and report to us in the comments there.
and the other thing that I wanted to say, Mike, was that you go, you meet yourself where you are and you do what you can do.
Right.
Because when I first started doing the keto diet, there were some things that had sugar in them that are round, that are multicolored, that I just think I couldn't live without ever. And, now I'm thinking, well, thank God I don't have to eat those things, because when I do, it makes me crazy. It just stimulates me to want more and more and more and more. And so now I'm free from that. And it's so ironic. People would say there's so much freedom around limiting what you eat. But for a food addict, there really is some freedom around that.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, you are so close. I don't know if you know this or not, but, with all the people I've worked with, you are so close. And the process that you're going through is super common. It's not like you're failing and other people have succeeded. It's approaching zero, the amount of people that say one day, I'm giving this up. Especially with any habit at all, I'm giving this up, and they never do it again. There's almost no one. This is part of the process. What you're going through is part of the process, So don't be hard on yourself just because. I mean, my thoughts about this, in this construct of living in process, that your ability to be aware that there's a 3-week thing and there's a this, and then we do some work and it's your mother, to rat yourself out, to tell on yourself that this is happening to another group of people, myself and, our meetings and whatever, you are succeeding. This is the process, right? And you keep doing it. And then you learn that your entire life should be this living in process. You should be processing what's going on with you. And then you start moving towards healthy, holistic ways to process it, right? Because you're more aware of it. You're no longer unconscious, which is, bless you, all of you, our listeners, you are no longer you're not seeking a sweet taste on your tongue. You're really not. You're seeking a dopamine hit to self-soothe from something that unconsciously has not presented itself to be solved or worked through. And actually, to be honest, you've got to realize that for since you were young and for most of your adult life, it has worked. That system worked. You call your mother from college and she's mean to you, and then you go have the sugar and the margaritas, and like it worked. It soothed those feelings. But now you're aware, and for you, dear listeners, like you can be aware that you are not looking for a binge. You're not looking for a sweet taste on your tongue so that you can just not feel for 5 or 10 minutes to push those feelings away. You are looking for a dopamine hit to soothe yourself so that you don't feel those nasty feelings. And largely, if you're just starting to listen to this channel, it's unconscious. It's not a conscious thought. Cammy, by contrast, lots of good work, hard work, realizes what she's doing. And I think what you have to do now, Cammy, is go to the next level to be aware that that's what's happening. And that's a good thing. It really is. Everything that you're doing is a good thing. Genuine.
Well, that's when you get to that next level where it's really not about the food, right? It's not about the food. It's about the feelings.
It's about the feeling. My sponsor a long time ago said something that I might help you in this circumstance. He said, there is a grading, which is a great word, a grading time between awareness and willingness, right? You're aware, and now that you're doing it, you're grading against the hard part of it. And then eventually the willingness comes to finish, you know what I mean? To do what you're attempting to do. So, I just think that you're in that grading period it's not gonna be fun. There's no easy way to do it, but you don't have to do it on a white knuckle basis, right? You don't have to like grit and bear it. You've got friends that you can call. You've got other self-soothing methods that you can continue to use. I think that you're like, correct me if I'm wrong, and I want you to answer this too, is like, you think that you haven't done it perfectly and that you're failing. And like, if you had this kind of grade in medical school, you would have flunked out. And you're not. You're actually succeeding in this process, How's that?
Yeah. Yeah, that falls very accurately. And, the other thing too is that when I think about how many things I've done in my life that have been so difficult, like I sent myself through all of my schooling. It was 14 years. I took care of the people I lived with to get myself through college. I took out loans. And then I've lost 2 children in these terrible accidents. I have 2 wonderful sons who are incredible young men growing up in this world, in this difficult world. And I've survived all of that. And like, I can't go 90 days without a binge. Like, that's the other part that really gets me. It's like, no, it turns out I can't go 90 days without a binge right now. And so giving myself some grace and being easier on myself and, allowing that is difficult for me.
Yeah, I get it. And you're not alone in that one. That's very real, But I think you're on the precipice of understanding, it's that you're right. And I've never been a big fan of this term, you're right where you're supposed to be kind of thing. But you're like right where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, because that sucks.
Well, I mean, the depth, I think that the depth of people's issues is the depth of where they started as a youngster, as a young person. You know what I mean? How much access they had to sugar. Like our most difficult clients, our most rebellious, our most denial-laden clients are people who were overweight at 3 and 4 and 5 years old, kindergartners. They had so much access, by whatever reason, access to sugar at that time that is so deeply ingrained in the way that they feel emotions or manage or handle emotions that it just is a harder slog. And that was not the case. You were freaking Miss San Diego. That was not your case. So you have a little bit of enough muscle memory to get back to that. Yes, you use sugar when you're younger, and yes, it's ingrained, but it's not like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but there was a very emotional aspect to that whole pageant thing, and ended up being a final in that thing back in 1987 because I had already applied to medical school and I was taking my classes pass, no pass. And so I started going to the gym and working out like 2.5 hours a day. And I started on this crazy rotation diet because in retrospect, I figured out that, hey, if I don't get in, because a third of us pre-med at UCSD did not get in. So I thought, if I don't get in, at least I'll be hot, right? So that's what I was doing. And I was so, I was so driven
Yeah.
to look okay and to be okay. And then I ended up getting in. Then I was smart and hot, and that was pretty cool. But then after I got accepted to medical school, I proceeded to sit on my brother's couch and watch soap operas and drink beer and eat pizza and ice cream for 2 straight months before I went to medical school and gained 25 or 30 pounds in 2 months. So there was a lot of unhealthy behaviors and things around all of that too.
Well, let's unwind
A
it.
lot of addictive type of things.
Let's unwind it a little bit. You, in essence, substituted the rigorous, let's just call it exercise addiction, for your sugar addiction at that time. And then you stopped doing that and you just went right back to it. It's really mappable. It's really graphable. You can really see it if you just go back and put it all together, and that's exactly what happened.
My whole life goes back that way. It's so interesting because when I sobered up, and I've been sober basically since 2000. That's not my particular date because I got into some issues with some other things a little bit later on. But when I sobered up, that's when the sugar took off. And ironically, that's when my marriage began to unwind too, because I was working on getting emotionally healthier. And we were both very much emotionally dysfunctional when we met. And we kind of meshed and clicked together in a really nice, unhealthy way. And I was very attracted to that at the time. Yeah. So yeah, it's like the whack-a-mole, right? And
Yes.
the last one that's standing up is my sugar, to just hit it down.
Right. And then, it's socially acceptable and no one's going to, you're not going to get arrested. And, there's all that kind of stuff. But, it's, yeah, I mean, now correct me if I'm wrong. It feels like a light has gone off, a light bulb has gone off, and you're not happy that you got to do it without the GLP-1. My nervousness around the GLP-1 is it may act as the exercise as you were leading up to the pageant. It's like, okay, it'll stall it for a little bit, but it's not going to fix it. You know what I mean? And you'll lose weight and you'll get hot, but it won't. The long-term process of growth will be waylaid. It'll be stunted a little bit.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to say was that it really comes down for me to love and acceptance, to self-love, self-acceptance, and of who I am, not what I do, because it took me a long time to figure out that there's a difference between human doing and human being. And my mother's very much a doer, and I, for many, many years, was very much a human doing. And to be a human being, which really means to be present in the moment and to have experiences as they come and to make healthy choices, not to look good or to be okay around others, but to make healthy choices to take good care of yourself because you love and accept yourself. That's where I am now. Yeah.
I love that phrase, or the difference between human being and human doing. And, if you're one of the things about this type of recovery, it is the opposite of being egoic. It's not, there's no ego involved because, when you're, a doc and you've got a lot of social, there's a lot of ego involved and you do feel better, even though, the other trough, the other side of the feeling good, then feeling not worthy or whatever, and it keeps going up and down. The goal is to just even it out so that you're just okay the way you are, because you are, there's no if and buts. If you and everyone listening is okay the way they are, and the reason they're not able to quote unquote lose the weight is because they're not accepting that, they're not managing their emotional life with things that take effort. They're doing it with a substance and burning out, literally frying their dopamine receptors in their brain, if you want to look at it physically. So, yeah, I mean, you're just right where you're supposed to be.
Well, I have to tell you that I'm really nervous about going without my little decaf coffees.
Good. I mean, I think that maybe if we focus on that as opposed to the little detour of thinking about and researching the GLP-1s, that'd be a good thing to do. It'd be a little something to keep your mind off.
Well, so I started in I introduced pulling. I don't know. Have you ever heard of that term where you get the coconut oil with the essential peppermint and you do the pulling of the germs from your
And
mouth in the morning?
I actually bought the coconut oil one time, but I never did it.
I bought because I wanted to get in the habit of doing that before I stopped the coffee, so that would be something that I would do in the morning. And I'm in the habit now. I'm in the habit. I wake up in the morning, I pour my little 5 milliliters into my little cup. I get it off of Amazon, and it's like this coconut peppermint. And then I swish it around in my mouth for 10 minutes. I watch and do it at 10 minutes in the morning before I call my friends for morning prayers. I was told to spit it out like into the trash because the oil can harden after a while. It gets hard and it cannot be good for your pipes, for your
Okay.
plumbing.
All right.
So I have my little cat food can that's empty from the day before. So I put it in there, I put it in the trash. And so I have this whole like little ritual starting, but then I go and drink my coffee, my decaf coffee with the cream in it. And I really use the coffee as a conduit for getting the cream into my system. So my question is, can I just do little tiny sips of cream instead of my coffee?
I don't see why that would not fall into the little berry thing, for a while. Whatever, it sounds like a logical construct. I mean, unless it keeps the cravings alive, I don't see why not.
Well, there's,
And I
yeah,
don't think you're alone in that. I think people are trying to get lactose, a little bit of sugar of some kind, a little bit of insulin spike in their brain and their emotions when they drink the coffee. And a lot of times it's the combination, the chocolate and the tea. It's the lighter speedball. It's what John Belushi died, an upper and a downer. You're using the caffeine and the sugar. Even when you're doing decaf and instead of sugar, you're doing decaf and cream, you're doing a little bit of lactose and a little bit of just enough caffeine. And it's strange, again, this conversation is going to sound like these two are wacky, but once you heal up from the beating that your sugar and your body has taken from the sugar, these other things, we call them borderline foods, may bother you. And I just think that you are so super sensitive, so highly sensitive, that you've healed up enough from sugar. I mean, it's been months. Well, no, I mean, it's been months with breaks, with the binges, but still there's healing there, you know what I mean? And these things you're sensitive enough to sense those. So, yeah.
yeah. Can you tell them, Mike, what the borderline foods are again? Just real slow, walk them through that. Because when I first started paying attention to sugar, I just put the borderline foods away. I said, don't worry about it. Eat all the borderline foods you want. Just don't eat sugar, don't eat flour. And then I had to start pulling in the borderline foods and eliminating them in order to be more successful.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. The borderline foods, there's a fifth one I wanted to add, and I have to think about it if that comes to me. But there's 4 categories. They're grains, all kind of grains, especially like what do they call it? Quinoa is actually the seed of a fruit. That's got a lot of fructose in it. But the other, grains, nuts and nut butters, most people don't realize that cashews, pecans, and I think even almonds, but cashews and pecans definitely, are drupes. You can look that up. DRUPES, drupes, are the seeds of fruit that have been hybridized over hundreds of years to take the bitterness out of them. And they have a lot of fructose. And when you concentrate them into nut butter, a lot of our folks literally eat the stuff, almond butter and such, right out of the thing, like eat half a jar kind of thing. So nuts and nut butters, dairy, cheeses, creamers and milk and that kind of stuff, and fruit and fruit juices. Like you can take dried fruit and fruit juice right off. You cannot use dried fruit if you're going to try and do this, or fruit juices. As we said, you can do a little bit of berries in the early days to help like your Suboxone to ease you off if you're having some cravings and sugar, but stay way away from the high glycemic. And the reason they're called borderline foods is that, just like you, most people use all of them as long as they don't use flour and sugar and caffeine, then they're okay. But then as they heal, 1 or 2 or all or a few will start to bother them, and they'll start to use them like they did the sugar. Like literally eat a whole bag of cashews or pistachios, and pistachios, some strange reason, are the highest fructose nut on the market. They've been hybridized over hundreds of years. so that they taste the way that they taste. So you just have to keep an eye out when you start to get off sugar and you're using some of these other products that do not appear to be on the list, as they may keep the cravings for real sugar.
All right. Well,
so how have we done? Are we going to give it at least one more week with no GLPs?
yes, let's give it one more week with no GLP-1. I'm going to not only do that, I'm going to make a commitment to be off of the caffeine.
Okay.
And off of the cream. I do have a little bit of cheese in the house, and I have a little bit of sour cream. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with that.
Hey, cheese and sour cream are tough. They're really tough. They're good complements for carnivore eating a lot of times, so they're hard. I get it.
Yes, and I will keep track of the things that I do to help increase my dopamine. The other thing that's interesting going through this process, how you said about the ups and downs,
Yeah.
it's so much better to be even keeled. That doesn't have a lot of drama and excitement in it, right? And so this is the thing. I'm like, okay, I'm missing drama and excitement because I was on Match.com and I would go on Match and I would find these guys and I would even go on these dates and, was with a guy for a few months and all this drama and excitement, and it wasn't good for me at this point in time.
Yes.
But man, do I miss it. And so then this is almost why I get to have the cream in my coffee. I'm like, look, I'm drinking some cream. I'm drinking dairy, the rebel in me.
Yes.
Just, so just being mellow and taking it easy is what I'm going to do.
No, I love it. Like a lot of people say, compared to their old life, which is a dopamine roller coaster. Again, dopamine is all the brain reward chemicals. Besides, it being steady like that is, the common phrase is boring. It's like, it seems boring since your old life, because I don't particularly care for the I'm addicted to chaos thing, but there is some reality to that, because some people's swings in chaos are monumental, up and down. But some people are just, especially rebels like you and I, are like, we just need a little bit. What did I hear the other day? And I like, sneakiness. Sneakiness is like that rebel coming out. A little sneakiness gives us a little shot of dopamine,
Love to be sneaky.
A little sneakiness. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
Karen calls it delusional. Like I'll get, when I'm getting the cream out of the refrigerator and I'm thinking, oh, I'm being sneaky. She's like, you're delusional. You're having cream in your coffee.
Right.
But, that's not how I want to think of it.
That's Steve Jobs. I used to do this. I used to live with this woman and the macadamia nuts. Like, she wouldn't have cared. Or actually, have you ever had this? I shouldn't say it on this kind of podcast, but the macadamia nut butter.
Oh, no, I've never tried that.
It's like 2 ounces or 3 ounces for $25. And it's like, and I would hide it, hide it in the thing. And she wouldn't have cared. But I'm getting a little sneaky buzz and I go out there. It's like, yeah.
I bet we could talk for a long time about that drama and sneakiness.
No, it's very real. I mean, it's very real. I mean, it's, I don't know.
Stay the road.
Coping behaviors that we deal with,
Yes. And, the other thing I wanted to mention, and I've learned this from you, Mike, is that for the people that are listening that just think we're crazy, there are some people out there that are just harmful users of sugar, right? Like you taught me, like a third of the people can handle sugar with no problem. A third of the people are harmful users, and that, might be where you fit in. And a third of us are addicts. And that's just definitely where I know I am. So, some of this might speak to you and some of it might not.
Yeah. And a harmful user is maybe overweight, but just because of the food system, they don't consciously think about the amount that they're ingesting. And over the years, it's caused weight gain. But a quick reset, they don't have this, that like with the conversation we've had today, they don't have that. Like they just say, wow, maybe I shouldn't try that. And then, they can put most of it down pretty quickly. But like you said, about a third of the people are just like you and I, they're actually addicted biochemically to the feeling they get or the process that it helps you soothe something, like whatever it is. Doesn't have to be your mom, being it could be anything. It could be literally anything. God forbid it's old sexual or physical trauma or, whatever. It could be anything. And that whole process, that whole understanding that that's what it is. If I can just get one message out to the world, is that it has nothing to do with exercise and weight loss and burning calories and da, 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 when they're trying to lose weight, which 95% of people come first to lose weight. It's about the management of the emotions with the product. That's the thing that everybody just, no diet plan ever thinks about it. They're just not talking about it. But in reality, after thousands some odd detoxes, you can see it. It's very clear.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and for helping me today. And no major tears today. We'll maybe have some next week. I'm going to come with lots of things to share about how my week went.
Please, you may have some anhedonia from the no caffeine, and you may be low, so text me and we'll have a conversation, because that really could throw you for a loop, Strangely,
all right.
Just cutting one cup of coffee of caffeine a day, a decaf coffee, which has some caffeine in it, could and the cream, so be careful. Be aware.
All right, everybody.
Be careful. Be aware.
Be aware and take care.
Yeah, there you go. I like it. Take care.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.